to Circular Firing Squad. I'm Marty Gencius, the counseling faculty at Kent State University and host for Circular Firing Squad. Well, we've got 3.5 members, and we'll get to that in a minute. 6 questions and 3 answers for each question. Each squad member generates a question that we all have to answer. Some of it's academic and some of it's just for fun. We've got a good mix of Halloween questions tonight and scary, spooky questions. But let's see who's with us on this episode tonight.
Hi, I'm Steph Martyr, doctoral candidate at Kent State University and practicing clinical counselor. And this is Nora.
Yay.
And my daddy calls me Boba. And he's my daddy's name is Michael, but he goes to work every day.
That's one of the rough things about being a grown-up. Elliott Ingersoll here, professor of counseling at Cleveland State University and host of Apply Topically.
And we have our first question tonight, and it comes from Stephanie.
Has course curriculum changed from 10 years ago? And how?
That's a good question, and it got me thinking about a couple of things. But all of our testing courses, of course, have gone digital. We used to have to save up, $70,000, $100,000 for waste tests and whisks. Now we have to save for iPads and devices and licenses. Psychopath, we've gone from just talking about one diagnostic manual, the DSM, to the DSM, the ICD, the DCO5, and psychodynamic diagnostic manual. That was a big addition. And of course, we still have no etiologies for anything, but why not multiply the manuals? What the heck? Let's have some.
Yeah, for me, it's always the flavor of the month. I like Elliott, have been around some 20 plus years. And now the flavor of the month is trauma. And so everything is trauma-focused treatment, which is, I think we've been doing that for a long time. We've just decided to put a flavor label on it. I'm concerned because I think it's consuming the curriculum in a way that prevents us from talking and training our students in a broader means of pathology and diagnosis. So, for example, the discussion is where we usually have diagnosis, which is a bucket load at our university, just with the DSM and all the stuff that goes along with it. It's a bucket load for any student. There's been discussion about eliminating the psychopathology class because of what is seen as duplication. And for me, yeah, Elliott, I agree with you. The etiologies aren't clear on a lot of these things, but the etiology and the treatment on top of learning the DSM, to me, begs craziness. But what they're doing is making room for a trauma and crisis course. So we don't know what we're treating. We don't know where it came from. We really don't understand the history of it. And we don't know necessarily the methods of treatment, but we're gonna teach folks how to do crisis and trauma. So they do have other courses like case conceptualization and treatment planning. They used to have an advanced, for the clinical people, they used to have an advanced assessment course, which included things like MMPIs and other types of projective measures, and that got dropped. So we're really downgrading, and we're downshifting, I should say, how we treat pathologies. And so, yeah, but it's the flavor of the month. So we'll see what happens in 5 years when a new flavor comes up.
Oh, so that's interesting. Those went to some darker place than I was kind of expecting. I actually hadn't really known. I just know that there's maybe a slightly different feel to newer counselors. Obviously some of it might be generational, but it just feels like their experience in school is different, significantly different than what mine was. And yeah, I don't know exactly what it is, but hearing about some of those changes might be pointing to what's causing that difference of feeling, because that would be bizarre to not have perhaps diagnostic course. Okay. But yeah, there's some rigor, it feels like, that's just not quite the same as it used to be. And even when I was a student, I think sometimes I was like, oh, okay, like that's where things are. But I appreciated being challenged. I appreciated learning beyond what was the content of the book, because that's just memorization. The rest of the stuff was the actual growth and learning.
Yeah, and I'll just a point of correction. We're not eliminating diagnosis. We're taking everything that's in psychopathology and deciding whether we really need it in
Oh.
diagnostic course. So, and
It was dense.
yeah, it was dense. And my issue is, how do you get that in on top of just teaching people how to do diagnosis in one course? So, but we're looking for space, and I think I'm going to say something that will most likely be controversial, but hell, it's my podcast. I think, Stephanie, the kinds of changes you're seeing are reflective of sort of the TikTok influencer kind of generation where everybody's opinion interferes or integrates as fact. So what's more important is this kind of surface understanding of what trauma is and what psychopathology and disorders are, because, we're just going to TikTok it out. And I think it's de-objectified the understanding of the science of pathology and diagnosis and treatment. It's turned it into kind of a personal experience. And so I see lots of students who come in and they'll talk about their own experience, and then they want to take their own experience in and use that as their fulcrum for working with clients versus trying to understand the whole spectrum.
Yeah, I get very aggravated with some people don't even teach the theories. We have good theories on why some of the disorders develop. There's 10 good theories of major depressive disorder, but if you don't know them, how can you plan treatment? If someone's existentially trading freedom for comfort, no antidepressant in the world is going to affect that. If someone's got all vegetative symptoms and it just came on and there's no psychological stressors or precipitants, probably a great candidate for an antidepressant. If someone's under chronic stress, they got cortisone, corticosterone flowing through their system, they could be damaging neurons, axons in the brain. That can cause depression. I mean, interpersonal isolation, which is epidemic in our country, can cause depression. But if you don't know the theories, then you won't be able to take the client's narrative, try to make a theoretical connection between their suffering and the way they view the world and what they're experiencing. But, Marty, back to your TikTokification, you start talking about that, people's eyes just glaze over. And
Speaking of Ingersoll, you've got the next question.
What variables do you think make people least likely to benefit?
I get first shot at this one. And this is just off the top. I think if there's no investment in the process of change, and in most cases, you can't work harder than your clients. I used to get mentally ill myself when I was trying to work harder than my clients. So I found out when I stopped doing that, then they had the abilities could emerge from them. Second to that, a willingness to change and trust the process. If there's no investment in change, and then there's no willingness once you have the investment, if there's no willingness to change and the ability to trust the process, you need to these are scary, but these are things that and I know you need to do in order to get to the next place. And that means difficult conversations that maybe you've avoided for a long period of time. And so that's sort of on kind of a more direct, basic level of interaction. The kind of work and the kind of, paradigm shift stuff that we see occasionally and that clients do, I think requires a ability to think symbolically. They have to be able to do abstract reasoning. Otherwise, it's just a quid pro quo of changes that need to occur with the person, and they do it or they don't do it. And then the outcomes are dependent on their, again, investment and their willingness. But to really kind of get the larger meaningful change where there's a paradigm shift, people have to have abstract thinking and in most cases have to think symbolically.
Okay, so that's me. And there's two different types of clients that I'm thinking of right now that tend to not maybe make the progress in a way that we're used to seeing. They're going at their own pace, which is quite slow, but I know. One second, and then I'll be there in 1 second. And so you have a client that keeps showing up, and we kind of keep talking around a topic over again and trying to approach it from different ways and to understand what's underneath it and all of that. And at a certain point, like, what's getting in the way? Why, what is keeping you from doing things? And usually, there might be a self-esteem thing or something like that that's blocking. They don't think they deserve the positivity or the benefits, as a cliche, as a trope. And then on the other side is people that lack insight, that, like Marty was saying, can have challenging conversations, which means they have to challenge their own sets of beliefs that they've had for so long. And, if their ego defenses are so high up that, it's just, that's just it's not going to be a benefit. They're going to think I'm stupid. They're going to think the process is stupid, and they're going to continue on in general. Or maybe that's just where I'm a bad counselor. But in general, I think that's what I've observed for clients, often not getting a benefit for counseling.
Yeah, these are good answers, and I appreciate both of them. The first thing I thought of is someone who's super attached to being right. That person is probably not going to do real well in counseling. I think you need some, I'd say, formal operational thinking. I like the way you phrased it, though, Marty, thinking symbolically, maybe a little beyond just formal operational thinking. And I agree, investment in the process and a degree of trust. Can you trust another person? I think that's important. When you can't, I've just noticed in practicum more and more cases that I'll just use the phrase. It seems like some places are just taking really chronic cases and dumping them on prac students, which is not what prac's supposed to be about. And we talk about titrating developmentally and get it worked out. But I'm like, I don't even know if this is a person who's going to benefit from counseling. And based on what you're telling me, they've been through 5 therapists and nothing's really changed. Then when you look at the variables, it's like problems investing in the process, problems in trusting, problems in wanting to be right, and problems in formal operational symbolic thinking, if you want to call it that. But yeah, those make it really, really, really challenging.
About the client who's been multiple times to counseling and you find out they've been unsuccessful. I had to do a supervision one time with a school counselor who was really anxious about working with a student who had been to multiple counselors and the counselors had not been successful. And I think symbolically, I have crazy images that pop into my head. And I just imagined her driving down a highway with the bodies of the previous dead counselors along the side of the highway. So, of course, not having any filter, I kind of said, this is the image that I have. Now, what are you going to do to keep yourself from being a dead body at the side of the highway? Which then started the whole conversation about how she might be able to work with this client differently, with this child differently, and loosened up her fear because, believe it or not, although that's kind of a horrible image, it loosened up her ability to not fear what was going to happen and to think a little bit more with the kid. Hey, so I've got the next question, and it came from the fact that we are 2 weeks post-conference at this point, and Steph and I went to the ACES conference, and my question is, what do you do post-conference? What's your follow-through, if anything has happened?
Well, I did have a person reach out to me, and I have responded. But I don't know, sometimes it's just a big release kind of thing when you get back. But right now with my life also, there's just, I don't know, there's not as much time to reflect as I would like. It's just kind of like I'm done with the conference and it's back into running around and chaotic life at the moment. So, but I can use the 5 hours on the drive home thinking about things, but I like to think about just the experience because it always seems to be something memorable. And actually, this was a really nice conference all around with presentations, with hanging out with people that I work with that usually we meet on Zoom. So it's nice to meet face to face. And then just kind of getting a little bit of taking advantage of being in a city, a different city. I like to think about it all. I like to talk to people if they reach out to me, if there's anyone that I wanted to talk to. And also, I make sure that I rate all of the sessions I attended so I can get my CEUs.
Elliott.
This was kind of funny because I read the question, what do you do post-conference? And I thought, I go home. I think maybe I've been really, that's been frustrating for me since I got sick. I keep missing conferences and I keep missing proposal deadlines. And it's very hard to keep everything straight in my brain these days. But I would like to get back into it. And I think when I would do presentations or workshops, if anything, it was just follow up with people I had met who I wanted to try to get to know better, or maybe we were going to work on something together. But yeah, I get into the party side of the conferences. So a lot of my goals are met socializing while I'm there. And then I'm so pooped out by the end of it, time to go back to life. And then I drive home and go back to life. But I've never been very good. I'm not much of a schmoozer. And I know some people can use those conferences to develop opportunities and networking. And that's great if you have that trait. That's a gene that missed me.
Yeah, I just post-conference, it always seems that for me, things are already set up. I set some things up pre-conference that I needed to follow up post-conference. I still have yet to do that. So if you're one of those folks that are listening to this podcast, this is the week that I will get back in touch with you for some podcasting stuff and some other things. The week after the conference was, chaotic in terms of getting things back into place. And then it preceded my wife getting some surgery done. So it seemed like every day we were being called back in to get more information, and me driving there and thinking about what was going to be done. And she had a successful surgery, and that was great. But then it was moving her out of the hospital and getting her home. We are so grateful for the outcome of it. So nobody worry about me if you're worried about that, and don't worry about my wife. She's in great spirits. But 2 days after we got back from the hospital, I started a cake rep visit. So I wound up doing a cake rep visit this last Wednesday through Friday. So everything was so crazy the last couple of weeks that now is the time that I can follow up on some of the things and contacts that I made and promises. I would say I make less promises now because there's less space for me to do it. And frankly, there's less of everything that I want to get into. I've got some commitments with associations, and I'm trying to maintain that. So going to the conference was kind of perfunctory. I did have the pleasure of presenting twice with Stephanie, and I just saw you use your middle finger to press your glasses up. Was that was not symbolic, I hope. Yeah. Yeah, I think we did a presentation on kind of practical ways and advanced practical ways to use AI, and that went over extremely well. And then we did a presentation on doing online research and how to use Seek, getting subjects in doing it. And she's had that practical experience in doing it for her dissertation, and I have the burden of SESNet in terms of doing it and managing people who want to put out calls for research. So those were the two high points of the conference for me, actually, was the time that we got to present together and the time that we did a little prep together. And then the dinner that we had with all the doc students, the dim sum dinner, was just sitting around the table. It was just in a quieter place, well lit. It was just wonderful.
That was quite a dinner, and thank you again, and Mustafa and everyone, and Doge and Ahmed, and
Yeah.
I'm making a shout out to everybody. Yay!
Yeah. Okay. You're on their good side.
Sorry.
So yeah.
I got caught up. It was really fun.
So conference. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You said, and I cut you off.
I apologize because I thought you had finished that up. So I was just kind of tacking on before I went into the next question, which is what I was trying to do. So I apologize if I cut you off.
Well, no, I kind of finished that up. Just to let me know that I've got, now is the time that I do my post-conference stuff. Steph.
Okay. What's your favorite Halloween spooky activity, if you have one?
Hard to pick one. My favorite holiday. We had our trick or treat in the neighborhood today. Always love that. I like to get to a haunted house if I can. Bonfires are good. Scary movies, I like to watch those. Carl and I put away quite a few of those this past week. And gigging at Halloween is especially fun. Sometimes the band gets to dress up. Sometimes the audience and the band are dressed up. We had a fun gig last night with this kind of fusion-y group I was working with at Jilly's music room in Akron, which was just great. So all of those things, and there's probably a bunch I'm leaving out.
I absolutely hate Halloween. And I'll give you the front end story of that. As a kid, I grew up in Chicago, and Halloween was great back then. It was an all-day activity, and we would go into these 3.5 flight apartment buildings with, sometimes 2, sometimes 4 apartments on each floor, and you'd hit the whole panel of doorbells. Someone would ring it, and you would basically do steps up and down. My parents, it wasn't very complicated. I hated dressing up. I was always like a football player with, sponges underneath my shoulders, or a hobo, which is so culturally wrong right now, that the candy was fine. We would go and get buckets of candy from working the blocks all day long. And it was kind of always dreadful trying to do it. So even when I got older and some of my friends were into pranks and stuff like that, I didn't want to get into that, lighting people's pumpkins on fire and stuff like that. It has never been my favorite holiday. People who dress up kind of look goofy to me. I'm sorry Nora's hearing this, but it's just, I don't have a favorite Halloween spooky activity. Elliott and I live in the same city, and we live in different neighborhoods in the same city, but Halloween is now set for a 3-hour period, was it today? From 2 hour. Oh, it was 2 hours from 4 to 6, and people will roam. And you have a choice. You can turn your light on and people will come up to your doorway, or some people sit at the end of their driveway. Or what we do is we put a bucket of candy out at the end of it's not candy, it's Tide Pods, out at the end of the driveway, and also shots of cinnamon. And it's with the driveway camera. It's so much fun to watch little kids do the cinnamon challenge. That's what I feel about Halloween. Yeah.
That's evil. We put out Tide Pods. Oh my goodness.
I had some good Halloween parties when I was in college. I can't remember if I told this story. I was samurai. I got a kimono, and I got a fake long knife, and I put a clip through my nose, and I went as samurai, and I changed my hair up, and I went as samurai punk. And the woman that I was going with, I did a date together, and it was kind of like our first date. And I went to pick her up, and she had like rainbow shirts on and jeans and a hat with stars hanging from it. And I said, well, what's your costume? And she said, I'm tripping. And that was not only her costume, but that was also her state of mind at the time. So yeah, that's my most favorite Halloween experience, was taking my date while she was tripping.
Okay. Well, I do love that story. I will give the first answer to you. So Nora, what is your favorite Halloween or spooky activity? Sonic? Being Sonic? Sonic. Yeah, Sonic the Hedgehog. That's your costume.
Sonic Jean Hunter.
Yeah, so those are her costumes, and she loves dressing up, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And then, oh, we haven't heard a single thing. Oh my goodness. Okay. So can you say that again? So what are your costumes? Okay. So that was your answer when I asked you, what's your favorite thing about Halloween? Okay. And you like seeing all of the awesome stuff. And we go to Spirit every day. And what do you like to do there? You press all the animatronics and the toys. So that's really what her favorite stuff is. It's been my favorite stuff, because she just loves Halloween. In May, she was asking for Halloween. Her birthday is in April. She wants a Halloween themed birthday. So I am not complaining. I think if she could gravitate towards any holiday or celebration time, that I am quite proud of her for this. But yes, so I'm going to set up her tent while Elliott, you ask the next question.
Just FYI, there's some very good memes going around on social media about animals getting scared by motion activated Halloween props. Oh my gosh.
Oh, they are the best. There's a raccoon who really got this clown, and it was awesome. Just launched at his face.
The bear.
You are really, really cruel people. Your treatment of animals.
And
So, Elliott, what's
you never saw anything like darndest thing.
what's your next question?
Oh yeah, another Halloween theme. As we jump into Halloween, what scares you? How is it similar or different from what scared you as a child?
Well, I think that goes to me first. My brother used to terrorize me. I have a brother who's 7 years older than me. He's passed on, but he, as an adult, he was a great brother. I can't harm him there. But as a younger child, he used to scare the dickens out of me every chance he got. For example, a first run when we were growing up was The Addams Family, the black and white television show with that is funny, but my brother convinced me it was too scary for me to watch and would do all sorts of things to prevent me from watching it and send me to my room early in the evening. He, if his older friends came over or his age appropriate friends came over, they would do everything they could to get the little brother out of the room or any curiosity. So another reason for me not to like Halloween, because it's just a remembrance of what scares me. In terms of nowadays, I don't watch horror movies. In fact, I'm a little upset that everything on streaming is obsessed with horror movies right now, because I can't so instead right now I'm rewatching Lawrence of Arabia, from my own collection, because everything that's being televised right now is horror. Particularly the ones that disturb me the most are the ones where there's things like decapitation or demonization, where people take the form of demons and things like that. And that probably would have scared the crap out of me when I was a kid, and I'm surprised my brother didn't try that. But that's all I can say on that topic.
I mean, what scares me? I think kind of in a different way, Marty, and at the other side of the horror spectrum, what I don't like the most are the movies about real people, or like what could be real people, like a Serbian film or Funny Games or movies like that I also no. I mean, that was a scary movie, but I was like 20 and I wasn't sure if it was real or not because the internet was new. But more like it was perfect at the time, not just the way at all. But it just hit exactly right when it did. But things just more like people tormenting other people for maybe perhaps no real reason. And I don't know, but with the movies I mentioned, if you know them, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't know if I'm scared with body horror, but sort of. And I just don't like those. I'll watch movies if they have a good plot, if it's like, like the original Saw, good movie. I'm not into some of that stuff, but whatever. But also what scares me now, I'll just keep my answer at the Halloween movie stuff, not real life.
I was a younger brother, but I loved to scare my older sister. So I wasn't too cruel, but I would get her to, I must have done this 3 times. I would tell her that a light wasn't working in the basement or something mundane. And I would go down and I would rig it so I could flip all the lights out. And then I would just scream as loud as I could. It was pitch black and it would freak her out. And then I'd give her another thing. She'd go down, fall for it like 2, 3 times. But I was pretty easily scared as a kid. And well, I'll wait for the final shot question for that story. But the things that scared me as a kid were more about, I guess, me getting hurt or my mortality. But now it's people I care about that I worry about more. Other stuff just doesn't really scare me as much. I appreciate the mythology and I love the idea of Halloween and Samhain and the Celtic idea of the veil between the worlds is thinnest here in Beltane. I mean, I really get off on all that stuff. So there is a lot to love. But I have a very active imagination. So as an adult, I can usually find ways to cope with what scares me. I worry more about other people and things. The possibility of something happening to them scares me now. So I was kind of outside the Halloween reference.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say movie wise, yeah, I don't like a lot of cruelty, like themes of confinement are hard, for me to watch. The new French Extremity, no way, I couldn't possibly watch that. But I've read books about it, trying to understand it psychologically. Little plug, Alex West, The New French Extremity, check it out. But yeah, those are things that I really do try to avoid. I'm still pretty good at people can get me with a good jump scare. My daughter delights in it. Since she was little, we'd play this game, and she will now and again just scare the Jesus out of me, and we'll laugh.
I scare my spouse just turning the corner unexpectedly. We have kind of low scare thresholds in our household. My final question for the normal round is, how do you manage trick-or-treating in your neighborhood?
Oh, well, I like to have candy, but we kind of split it up. So the last few years, I don't know how this year is going to go, where, I take Nora out, so I can't be home. Usually Mike is, funny how that always ties up on nights to hand out candy. But I'm just kidding. I'm teasing him. But but we take her out, maybe do that for an hour, and then come back and for the second hour, hand out candy to other kids in the neighborhood.
Elliott.
Yeah, we always turned it into a party. I always loved trick-or-treating. And then when I was too old to trick-or-treat, I would do decorations and I would, hand out candy. So my father-in-law and my son, my partner and I, and a friend of ours will come sometimes, and sometimes she'll dress up her dogs and bring them too. And we all sit out in front of the steps, hand out candy, and we love watching the kids and looking at the costumes. And I'll tell you, we could get maybe between 300 and 400 trick-or-treaters. And that's my father-in-law. He only gets 1 or 2. So he loves coming over. It's kind of a little party we have. And then I make some soup. I made a nice sausage potato soup with a kind of a creamy sauce today and some sourdough bread. Yeah, so we make a little party out of it. When the kids were little, we would split up the duties and one would take them and one would stay at the house. But our father-in-law, he's been joining us for 22 years doing this. He's got his big orange pumpkin shirt and orange hat. That's how we do it.
Well, you've already identified me as the Grinch of Halloween. As Elliott mentioned, in our city, we have a 2-hour period where Halloween is kind of condensed to, and that's different than my experience growing up. I've already told you about that. It was an all-day Saturday experience. And sometimes then you had excuses to go out on Halloween night if Halloween didn't fall on Saturday. So, yeah, the ruling is if you turn off your front door light and you close the curtains, people won't come and bug you. And that's a pretty solid rule. Now, my kids are 31 and 35 or something like that. And we've lived here for 25 years. Check that. We've lived here for 28 years. 25 years. So, they were in the age where they could still do that when they were younger, but Aileen would generally do the rounds with them up and down the block just for the experience, and I would stay home. And whether we were at the end of the driveway with stuff or whether we decided not to, that's how we managed it. No, I do not put Tide Pods out, and I do not put out shots of cinnamon powder for them to do the cinnamon challenge with. Although in my mind, I have all sorts of great visuals from that experience. That's all. And Stephanie's got her mouth wide open like, I can't believe.
This is my mentor, ladies and gentlemen.
Last question. And this came from Stephanie. And Stephanie, there's probably a bit of a background story here because you have Nora with you tonight. And
Oh, yeah.
so I'll open it up and we'll go to Steph first and then Elliott and then me. What was the age that you watched your first horror movie?
All right. And this question comes to you because I discovered today, Nora, what did you ask me to watch from Under the Ground? Yeah. So anyway, she asked me to watch from like Creatures Come From Under the Ground, and me having no clue what this is, she identified it as Tremors, and her father showed her Tremors. So I learned that today. So I'm like, she's 4.5 years old, but fear not, ladies and gentlemen, he only had, a small taste for her. As he said, he just showed her the monster and nothing violent or the rest of the movie. Whatever that means. Anyway, so she was 4.5 and I was about 8. I think I went down to the neighbors 3 houses down and they were watching Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. And I watched like that first whole opening sequence when he also, oh, that's funny, was also like a big worm thing and was eating people in the beginning. So there it is. I was about twice as old, but it was still a really weird, gross worm.
Tremors is kind of tame, though. It's a fun movie. It's a really fun movie.
It is. I just think 4.5 is different because...
Oh, yeah. I wouldn't disagree. Yeah.
And there's nothing campier than that.
Those toothy dreams, the toothy worm dreams are what 4-year-olds get. So, yeah. Elliott?
But I must have been 4 or 5. And my parents they loved Alfred Hitchcock films and they were rewatching The Birds. And it was an 8:00 movie on a Friday night. And so they thought, oh, well, that if anything severe, they'll censor it out. Well, they didn't. There's a scene where the dude's eyes are pecked out and he's dead in the bedroom. Boy, that was nightmare fuel for a few years. But I was glad I saw it. I still enjoy all of Hitchcock, but I enjoy that film in particular for the creativity and shooting challenges. But yeah, I was 4 or 5.
Yeah, for me, I can't remember how old I was. It occurred when in an ABC afternoon movie in Chicago. WLS-TV in Chicago used to put on movies at like 3:30 to dinner to 5 o'clock, I guess. And they would and I think it was probably Frankenstein. The original Frankenstein was the first movie that I saw. And that is kind of tame by all accounts. I do remember not seeing Hitchcock's Psych. I wasn't attracted to these films all my life. I was, would kind of go, nope, let's not go see that. But I did remember for one of my film courses, I saw Hitchcock's Psycho for the first time when I was in college and, 18, 19 years old. But yeah, really kind of lame movies for me growing up because I avoided the Freddy movies. And well, I think Freddy was a little bit past my time growing up, but the Freddy movies and the Jason movies and all that. Maybe, and then I think another one that I would say is horror movie is Alien. And that I didn't see until I was, when it first came out, and I was much older then. So so I asked the listeners to think about what's your favorite scary movie and when was the first time you saw it. You can always email us at ThePodTalkNetwork@gmail.com. Thanks to the firing squad, Elliott, Stephanie, Nora, and myself. I get to thank myself. Nora's holding up a blinking jack-o'-lantern. Folks, you need to really look at the video stream. You can find us at youtube.com/@CFS podcast. So if you go to our channel, you can see Nora and the flashing pumpkin and see how scary we really do look in real life. Our website is ThePodTalk.net. Thanks for the folks who joined us tonight and our listeners and viewers who watch us on a regular basis. Our theme music is for Menage a Quad, Real Swing Shet. That's it for this episode of Circular Firing Squad. Ready, fire, aim.